In a world full of uncertainty, education isn't just learning, it's becoming. It's the foundation that turns questions into quests. Seekers of knowledge redefine industries and rewrite our collective story. Each lesson sparks a new beginning, where education elevates and pioneers rise. In their hands, innovation becomes the blueprint of a brighter tomorrow. Dreamers captivated by museum walls become the artists of tomorrow. Their imaginations blossom, painting a future once only dreamed of. Here, changemakers forge the future. Hesitant steps today grow into confident strides toward tomorrow. Each breakthrough kindles the fire of hope and courage, where courage is nurtured and leaders are born. A new generation rises, shaped by knowledge, driven by purpose. They are explorers, creators, and changemakers, each carrying the light forward, turning possibility into promise.
I can't stand still. How could I? There is so much to explore. So much I haven't been yet. Ask me what I'm doing now. I'll say, getting there, one step at a time. I won't stand still. Correction, I can't. Keep walking.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shoma Chaudhary. I'm the founder of Lucid Lines. And on behalf of all our partners and our entire team, this is a very, very warm welcome to all of you here at Ignition. And I always say this, I know it sounds a bit gimmicky, but I really want to thank Chennai because we were worried today that you wouldn't turn up. But Chennai Super Kings has not kept you away from us. And today the rain hasn't kept you away from us. So big applause to all of you for being just the most wonderful audience. As I always say, Lucid Lines is a company that's absolutely passionate about the power of ideas and conversation. And that just grows more and more urgent with every passing day and every passing month. So it's a real pleasure to be here every alternate month to present a really interesting canvas of conversations that compels and really impacts all of us in our lives, both as individuals and as corporates and as entrepreneurs. So to the people who really make this possible, our heartiest thanks to Shiv Nadar Foundation, our presenting partner. They're the reason that these evenings happen. And Shiv Nadar Foundation is set up by Mr. Shiv Nadar himself with his personal money. He, of course, is the founder of HCL Technologies, a $13.8 billion company, one of the largest technology companies. And their core vision is creative philanthropy. They believe very deeply in the power of education as a transformative force, and they want to create a meritorious society which will cut across all socioeconomic divides and where education and its enablement will be available to all. They have some of the most premier institutions in the country, both in terms of schools as well as universities, right here in Chennai and of course in Delhi, Gurgaon, NCR. And they've spent more than $1.5 billion on their educational institutions. They have alumni and constituents of more than 1 lakh people that they have impacted. Currently, they have schools, teachers that are drawn from the best institutions across the world. They have more than 39,000 alumni students who have studied in Ivy League colleges, in the best universities of China, Singapore, Australia, UK. They're working in Fortune 500 companies. But that's not just the entire story of Shiv Nadar Foundation. What is also amazing about them is that through their Vidya Gyan and Shiksha initiative, they make the same world-class education available to those who are economically disenfranchised. And it's like being given a Harvard education, regardless of whether you have the money for it or not. So we are really proud to have them as our partners, and a very warm applause to them. I'd also like to thank Johnny Walker, Lux Water. All of you, of course, have wet your throats, come away, completely liquid in the brain. But what makes them absolutely wonderful partners again is that Johnny Walker, Keep Walking, stands for ideas of progress, both personal and collective. They believe in the power of embracing bold, transformative, collaborative energies, unique identities. Keep Walking can translate into so many different shades of human dimensions, both in terms of rallying call, encouragement, resilience, again, boldness, boundary breaking. And those are all the qualities that they really stand for. The reason they like to partner with us and support us is because so many of the speakers that we bring here embody that spirit of Keep Walking. And today in particular, all the speakers really embody that, because we have a political leader, we have an economist, and we have a political scientist, the 3 nodes in India that really deserve both resilience and a rallying call. So a big thank you to Johnny Walker for being our partner. I'd also like to thank Lexus. I always ask you to please turn around and look at that beautiful piece of machinery that I have not yet got to own, but I really hope that some of you will buy that today, because Lexus partners with us, not just because of the objects or the cars or the machinery, but because Lexus stands for emotional experiences. And they believe that ignition stands for an emotional experience that money can't buy. So their car stands for Japanese craftsmanship, for bleeding edge technology. It has in its segment, it is really the most premier car because it has an 8-year warranty. It's a hybrid car. It can go for miles, without recharging. And it is a car that, as I said, stands for both luxury and conscience. So please do take a look at that car, shower it with love in the cocktail break when you're drinking your water and sipping your wine. So a big thank you to Lexus. I'd like to thank Vumadi Bangaru Jewelers. They're a 5-generation brand, absolutely synonymous here in Chennai. You don't need an introduction to them. They stand for both tradition and modernity and reinvention. They've created the Sengol that now is, adorns the parliament. They have a fantastic range of jewelry called the Avatara. It's a fabulous idea, and every woman would really vibe with that because they've reinvented what we call locker jewelry. And I know because I haven't been to my locker in, I think, like 20 years because it's jewelry you can't wear. But here, they've really transformed that into necklaces that become either one piece or many pieces, bangles that both come apart and reconfigure, earrings that furl and unfurl. And as always, this is my Cinderella hour because I get to wear it for this 1 hour. I'm going to turn my hair back, show you the jewelry I'm wearing. But please do look at their stall at the back. And they are just exquisite pieces. It's a woman, it's meant for women who both straddle the milestones, the everyday life, modernity, and tradition. And we're very happy to have them as our partners as well. I'd like to thank Brand Avatar, our event partners, Hema Chandra, and of course, always the biggest applause for Hemu, the Merlin of Madras, that she blows her flute and all of you come. And as I've said, it's not to a dangerous end, but to a salubrious one. So thank you very much, Hemu Ramaya. And of course, to my partner, Aditya Puri, and the excellent team at Lucid Lines that puts this together. So thank you, all of you, for being here. And now we're going to go straight into, as I said, a riveting spectrum of speakers that are going to take us deep into our own relationship with our republic. So first up is a leader that got to actually create and shape a state as it was born. A state that came from, in many ways, the kind of disenfranchised history that made it want to break away and be a state on its own. And K.T. Rama Rao was part of the party that got a chance to create the vision, the mandate, and the personality of the state. He's been a transformative leader. He's a 5-time MLA. He also put out a vision that both straddled the agrarian identity of Telangana as well as taken it to a kind of technologically forward personality where it can hold its own in global conversations. So both to talk about that journey, but also the sobering idea that even when you do that, you can still lose an election, and what are the tough lessons that you learn from that, why this country doesn't have the opposition it needs, and many of the other big-ticket issues that really compel us all. To hear his perspective on all of that, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome KTR.
Lovely seeing you. You have a preference?
No, I've been told by my team to sit here.
Thank you. Thank you, Shoma. That was a lovely introduction.
Thank you for coming, KTR.
Thank you so much.
So I'm going to give you all the easy bits first, which is to lay out your vision, your CV. As I said, that very few people get to literally shape a state as it is born. So when you occupied that chair and your father was the CM, what were the big, compelling issues that drove you to, and what did you do over the 9 years that you're really proud of?
Firstly, thank you. Thank you for hosting this lovely event, and I was blown away when you were speaking so eloquently about Johnny Walker, and then I realized we were talking about water. Well done. When you get a fresh start, it's very, very difficult. It's very, very rare that in life and in politics or any sphere of life, you get a chance to begin afresh without the burden of legacy. So when you do get that opportunity, where you don't have the burden of legacy on you, you can really reorient, rethink, re-strategize, rebrand, and do a lot of things that you would want to do in life. And that's exactly where we began in 2014. When the state of Telangana, which has its own story, its own story of story full of struggle, sacrifice, and dignity, and many, many other elements, eventually became a reality in 2014. Our goal was very, very clear. We wanted this state to be the lighthouse for the rest of the country. We wanted to prove a point not just to ourselves, but also to the rest of the country, which kept saying, this probably won't be a viable state. But today, as I sit here in Chennai, and as I talk about my state, while I may not be in government anymore for the last 2 years, I'm filled with a sense of pride. And the reason why I say that is because I firmly believe Telangana is the most successful startup state of independent India. Now, why do I say that? Our per capita in 2014, when we began our journey, was about 1,14,000 rupees. And when we left the office in 2023 December, our per capita, we were ranked number 14 in the country in 2014. But in 2022-23, when we left office, we were the number 1 state in India with 3,87,000 rupees of per capita. Thank you. Our gross state domestic product was 4.5 lakh crore in 2014. It tripled and it became 15 lakh crore in 2023. Again, highest growth rate for any state in India. More importantly, I know all of you have phones, all of you all have, are very addicted to social media. So if I may indulge them for a minute, I'd say, please, if you can pull out your phone for a second, maybe just open Google or ChatGPT, just to give you an example of what we've done and how we've benchmarked ourselves. Please type in, if you can, the world's largest lift irrigation project. The world's largest lift irrigation project. I'm not talking India's largest, but the world's largest. Any answers? Anybody? I thought these guys would be very, very trigger happy, but...
Yeah.
Anybody? Yes, sir.
But you can be faster than ChatGPT right
Absolutely,
now.
I am faster than ChatGPT. Well, this is a project called as Kaleshwaram. It's based in Telangana. It irrigates about 45 lakh acres of land. And this has been a game changer for Telangana's rural economy and agriculture. In fact, we were ranked number 12 in India on agriculture produce. Today, we are ranked number 1, surpassing Punjab and Haryana in paddy production. Now, we've benchmarked ourselves against the best in the world. World's largest innovation campus is in Hyderabad. You can Google that too. World's largest Amazon campus is also in Hyderabad. So our growth has been across sectors. If you look at our rural development model, we have consecutively won 30% of national awards on the National Panchayati Raj Divas. 3% of India's population winning 30% awards. So it's a very unique model.
I have to say, you've also been very successful with organic farming, which Sri Lanka was not. Had a disastrous experience with that, but you haven't.
Absolutely. So the growth has been all round, the growth has been inclusive, the growth has been multi-sectoral, and as a result, for 9.5 years, despite COVID, despite demonetization, despite a lot of decisions that didn't go very well for us, still we were able to maintain the growth momentum. We actually ended up, giving a run to even Bangalore as Hyderabad. Gave Bangalore a run for their money in terms of creating technology jobs as well. We beat Bangalore 3 quarters in a row, which has never happened in India's history. So I'm very proud of my state and what we've done. But yes, like you said.
Here comes the slam question, right? So I'm going to take you to a national perspective also. But before that, yes, having done all of this, and there isn't dispute that you did it. Of course, there's a lot of criticism whether this was evenly distributed, whether it really went down or it didn't, but not for intention and not for vision. People wouldn't critique you at all. But even the fact that you were attempting to do this on a blank slate, why would you lose an election? So what would the introspection and correction lead you to?
I'll tell you what, just to draw a parallel, for those of you who follow politics and for those of you who follow electoral politics. In 2014, we had won 63 seats out of 119 in Telangana. We formed the government because the magic figure was 60. In 2018, we actually went 4 months ahead of our general election. We won 88 out of 119. And in 2023, we won 39 out of 119. And the margin of difference between my party and Congress, which won the election, was hardly 1.8%. But of course, first past the post, even if it is by 0.1%, they've still won the election. Just to draw a parallel, if you think about it, Prime Minister Modi has won in 2014, I think with 278 or something, BJP. And then in 2008-19, they won 303.
True, KTR. But I don't want,
coming to.
I don't want to lose people with the numbers, but just the heart of it, that if you were on such a good trajectory, in retrospect, what do you think you didn't get right?
2 things. I think the short-term, perception that was created that, Congress is going to come out with the political panacea in the form of 6 guarantees and 420 plus promises. See, Shoma, if I have to answer in one line, economic bankruptcy of ordinary Indians is real. Intellectual bankruptcy of political class is real. And that's a deadly cocktail. economic bankruptcy and intellectual bankruptcy. And Congress, when it comes out and makes a promise that they are going to deliver the moon, which is possibly going to cost at least 3 budgets in 1 year, if I have to add up. Yet people bought into that, some of them, and therefore the difference was 1.8%. We lost. But I don't look at defeat as a major, loss of face or something. It's a mirror. I mean, if you think about it, it just tells you probably what went wrong, probably what could be improved, what could be corrected. So yes, there are areas which, of course, we have to improve. There are areas which probably where perception needs to be corrected. And there are areas where we could probably continue to build. So
introspective political leader is just the rarest of creatures. So when you're saying that there are things that could be fixed, what would those be? And the reason I'm probing you for that is because if you come up with some of those answers, I think it would link across political parties. And like I said, I want you to take you to a national perspective.
Sure. I think one of the things that we didn't do right, of course, was I think the perception that was created that while we were delivering in government, we were not accessible. I mean, our MLAs, probably our ministers, that is something that we could have done a better job at. Secondly, I'd say, the anti-incumbency that people talk about is real. If only we had changed maybe 15 to 20 more candidates, definitely we would have done a lot better. So I think people wanted change. People wanted probably a different face, a fresh face. That's something that we missed out on. And third and most important, of course, after 10 years, they talk about 7-year itch, but unfortunately in governments, in politics, we run a 5-year cycle. So maybe there was a 10-year itch, which also triggered this little bit of a backlash.
I'm going to park this question, but we'll come back to it then. That what do you think competitors like Mr. Modi, Patnaik, and Nitish also in Bihar, what are they doing that nobody seems to get itchy with them, So, but just for the moment, I'm going to park that question. I want to come back to your party for the moment. That, like I said, that there's been this really modernizing, vision which straddled both technology and rural, realities of Telangana. But the reason that the party has not been able to hold on to power is also a sense that, all the allegations that go to all parties across India now. One, that it's a family fiefdom. Second, that there is, tension between your sister and you, that there's, fractures within the family itself. And so I want to ask you 2 questions. One, that do you think that this is a malaise across Indian politics that actually needs deep thinking now? That you plan succession, you plan how you must, let's even forget the nepotism aspect of it, but just that how can power sharing be done in a correct way? And secondly, is there any way that parties can prevent themselves from falling into, that idea that this is a family fiefdom?
Tell me something. If it's okay for businesses to have successes from the family, if it's okay for other, professions also to have successes from the family. In fact, if anything, if you ask me, in politics, we are up for scrutiny every 5 years. I'm a 5-term elected MLA, When I am introduced into politics, yes, I was introduced as my father's son. But if I'm not good enough, if I'm not fit enough, if I'm not capable enough, of course, people would throw me out. They have done this in this beautiful country of ours. Indira Gandhi was defeated. NTR was defeated. Several other top leaders have been defeated. So I'm a nobody when compared to them. Now, the second aspect is, of course, I'm not trying to justify how, the means to get into politics. All I'm saying is families, struggles, successions, they happen all over the place. Now, how do you get out of it? I think the only way is communication. The only way is not just communication within, but also outside. And that is something probably that we have not done well enough. Again, going back to what you said about the setback we suffered in 2023. So I have to be candid. I have to confess. Maybe yes, maybe we haven't communicated clearly enough inside and outside, and that's probably one of the reasons as well.
Yeah, and this is something that, as I said, cuts across party lines. Like you hear now that the TMC is suffering from it. Akhilesh Yadav's, lost the election because of a family feud within, that it was not consolidated. You've seen that in the Shiv Sena. You're seeing that in your party. So my question really is that if you were, I'm not just personalizing this, but looking at it that this cuts across Indian politics, that is there a way, where this could actually be professionalized? You spoke about companies, but then companies actually plan for succession. where power can be shared, where it's, it's actually done in a professional way. Do you think that there's any scope for that in Indian politics?
Honestly, no. I don't think it is going to happen anytime soon. But yes, with lot of professionals that are coming in, especially with strategists like Prashant and others who have come to play a very, very important role in politics and also during our election cycle, there is hope. But I don't see it happening anytime soon because, essentially, end of the day, politics or any business does run from a unitary chain of command. And if the boss, the leader, is somebody who's, able to rally his troops and make sure that he also, is able to inspire confidence among people, only then it works. Otherwise, no matter how professionally you run. For example, if you take a look at two corporate entities, large infra companies. One is L&T, which is run by professionals. Another company is called Mega Engineering, based out of Hyderabad, which is almost, I think, second largest or first largest now. Mega is largely family driven. L&T is professional driven, but both are successful. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive. There are parties which are run by families, by leaders within probably a small coterie, have been successful. DMK is an example in Tamil Nadu, which has been, I think, in government or in opposition for the last 5 decades or more. And likewise, there are parties like others, which I can't name right away, which also have had a professional setup and have been doing well. So I don't think it's a, zero-sum game, end of the day.
Okay, I'm going to come back to this because there are many things, but I'm not going to quite drop this topic because it's something that certainly the BJP is able to play up against all other parties, that one, that power goes through the bloodline, and secondly...
BJP does it conveniently. When it suits them, they align with Shiv Sena, and they have no problems with their nepotist angle. When it suits them, they align with TDP. When it suits them, they align with anybody, JDS. When they'll align with anybody, and nepotism then goes for a toss. But when it doesn't suit them, of course, they'll play it up and they'll try and, drum up as much support in the media and elsewhere. So it's a very convenient posturing is what I would say.
I agree, but the only thing I would say, and we're going to come to the BJP and certainly some of the big issues on which you are critical or which concerns everybody, but would you say that the one thing that they have managed to keep up is that they keep invigorating their cadres because new people are given a chance, So even in the more family-led parties, is it not possible to give a greater range of people really powerful positions? If you go back to even within the Congress, the Nehruvian era, they really had giants across the spectrum, So why is it that it's such a narrow chokehold where people begin to feel suffocated in the family parties?
Tell me something. You think BJP is run professionally and people are given chances? I don't agree with that at all. In fact, if anything, other than Prime Minister Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah, I don't think anybody has any say in that party anymore. So how are they any different from any other political party in India? I don't think they are different at all. So firstly, I don't agree with the premise. And secondly, yes, I do see a great scope. I do see a great scope for specialists coming in. I do see a great scope for others coming in and also playing an important role. When you look at Tamil Nadu politics, my friend Tyaga, PTR, has done exceptionally well. He's not from the family of the, chief minister, but he's done exceptionally well here. Likewise, I'm sure there are many others who've done very well in various parties, including our party. So I don't see it as a broad generalization that BJP has done certain things very well, which others have not been able to. I think most parties are very, very similar if you look closely.
Okay, so just one more persistent question on this is that, do you think that just handling even a feud within the family with better optics, with more accommodation, would make people feel reassured? Because there is this sense, even say with Rahul Gandhi, when he couldn't keep even his friends within the party, there's a sense that if you can't manage your own brood, then how can you manage a country and all the contrapuntal energies that come there, So again, in that mood for introspection, do you think that this entire thing could have been handled better?
You know what? Every family in the world, no matter where they are, will have challenges. In fact, one of the toughest situations in life is to align expectations within a close group of friends or family. So yes, in retrospect, could things have been handled better? Of course, I would say yes. But is it something that I would be avoiding in future? I don't know, because you will continue to run into issues. You will have to manage. See, there are 3 challenges when it comes to expectations. alignment of expectations of what you want versus what I can offer, management of people, and more importantly in politics, especially within a closed family or even a closed group of people, management of resources. Now, this is what leads to a lot of discontent. This is what leads to a lot of unfortunate situations. I would say, yes, in retrospect, things could have been done better, but that's how life is. You have to take what you served.
Right. Okay, I'm going to move away from this a little bit. To come back to your vision for Telangana just for a moment, because I think that's very pertinent for the rest of the country, is that, there's technologies hurtling towards us. There's AI coming. The year that Google put $10 billion into OpenAI, they actually laid off 10,000 people. So there's a sense that there's going to be massive layoffs, that as we embrace more AI, both blue-collar jobs as well as white-collar jobs are going to be jeopardized. So, in that sense that you've got a chance to envision a future for a state that did not have a legacy, with this kind of, tornado of technology coming once way, both opportunity and risk, what is your big picture thinking, if you're voted back to power, what is the gear shift that you will do now, if you're voted back to power, to plan for this new economic era?
The first thing is, I'll start off with your last point where you said this is a new economic era. India has always been sitting on the cusp of greatness. We've always been told that we were a great country and we definitely will become great again. We keep talking numbers. The fact is, we have the world's largest think force, the world's largest workforce. Now, how do you convert this intellectual capacity into economic prosperity? That's been the big leap of faith that unfortunately did not happen in many parts of India. Now, in my state, if I have to stick to my state, because that's where I worked for the last 9.5 years, in 2014, we had only 323,000 employees in technology sector. But with policy interventions, with interesting, interventions such as T-Hub, T-Works and others, India's largest prototyping facility, etc., we were able to multifold, had a manifold jump from 3 lakh plus to almost 1 million. Now, how did that happen? Because we kept investing in newer sectors. We kept investing on new technologies. Now, with AI looming large, with everybody talking about potential job loss. In fact, as I was flying into Chennai this morning, I was seated next to a gentleman who heads L&T Mindtree. So when I asked him about this imminent threat, imminent challenge of job loss, he said, it's a bit overplayed. This was his perspective. He said it's a bit overplayed. It was like how most of the restaurants and service industries got rid of their employees during COVID, because they said, we don't see any hope of bouncing back in the near future. A lot of hotels were sold. A lot of hospitality industry, took a major hit. But then when it became fully functional again, it was very, very difficult to find talent. So what I would say is, in this so-called AI, which is looming large, like you said, AI threat, I would say there's a huge opportunity for India, especially a country like India, where you have tremendous, tremendous opportunity where, India's, for the last 2.5, 3 decades, we've been the high-value, low-cost human capital destination for Americans, for Europeans and others. That edge you will still have for another 20 years. That is not something that you're going to lose in the next 2 decades at least in the high-value sector. So therefore, I would bet big on all the applications of AI into various sectors, be it life sciences, be it healthcare, be it aerospace. As long as you're able to find that convergence point, I think India will still do great. Deep tech, India will still do amazing. So the potential job loss that people talk about is, of course, real, but I think it would affect the first world more than India or any other second, third world countries. So at this point in time, if I was voted back to government in Telangana, the first thing I would do is make sure that we equip our children, because only 30% of our STEM graduates every year who come out of colleges are employable. The biggest challenge is industry readiness of our workforce. That is something where we have to work together with the industry. That is something we haven't done well. Germany has done phenomenally well, where they have a dual degree, where you get to go to a practice school in the industry for about 6 months. That is the sort of focus I would put on. So rather than worry too much about AI and how it would impact us immediately, I would say focus more on the convergence points, focus on creating value additions and more jobs. And that is something I would focus on if I were to vote it.
So then I'd flip the coin and ask you that, is India taking its technological destiny seriously enough? You know, are we still too embedded in the old ideas of, sort of more labor-intensive manufacturing, which may go away? You know, we've been seeing big industry coming, but it's more automated, so jobs finally aren't created. So do you think that India is in fact then doing enough to embrace its technological destiny?
Absolutely not. We've been very, very happy with what has been happening. Just to give you an example, in mid-1980s, China and India, we were on the same, same path, literally same point in terms of GDP. In fact, at one point, India in 1980s, early 1980s, India was a larger GDP, larger economy than China. But look at them now. 40 years later, they're 6 times bigger. They're 20 trillion economy. We're still languishing at about 3.8, 3.9 trillion. What went wrong? What happened? If you think about it, I think Chinese have realized that stability in terms of policy and in terms of long-term impact, discipline, scale, these are the things that matter. So they chose economics as their playbook. And we chose politics of identity, politics of, various forms as our immediate goal, I guess. As a result, today, China's 6 times bigger. We missed the bus big time on that. Indonesia.
They're 13,000, GDP, I mean, per capita GDP.
We are 2,200. And the US is 86,000. So point is, even Indonesia, Vietnam have figured this out. Even they have become, a new age, modern countries which look at manufacturing and scale. Unfortunately, India has not been doing that, despite good slogans, Make in India, Digital India, etc. So therefore, we are definitely not doing enough. We're definitely not doing justice to our potential. There is so many things I can tell you that need to be corrected. But one thing I will say, imagine if one state, Telangana, can become, within 9.5 years, the state with the highest per capita. Prime Minister keeps talking about double engine. I don't think double engine would work. You need 28 states, 28 engines revved up, 28 engines doing really well, 28 engines powering off in a big way, to be able to, and play to their strengths, of course. Tamil Nadu is a coastal state, has a huge coastline. How do you leverage that? Telangana is landlocked. How do you leverage the opportunities there? Madhya Pradesh has other potential. So if 28 engines are working simultaneously, then you would actually get to that 2047 point where you would probably be a first world or a second world country at least. So unless that happens, unless we're stuck on the double engine mode, I don't think things are going to change.
And like you famously said that, and right now coming from Delhi, I can tell you the double engine feels like a failed engine.
No, it's a 4, in Delhi you have 4 engines, by the way, in case you forgot. You have the Lieutenant Governor, you have Delhi government, you have the municipal corporation, you have the union government, all powered by one party, yet air quality is terrible. So you figure.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, not only double engine, but the Prime Minister right now saying "Mausam ka maza lijiye" was really salt on very, very deep wound, So that doesn't feel good. And like you famously said, and I'm going to take you there. To some of
now I know why you do these shows more in Chennai and less in.
No, and like you said, double engine is sometimes jumla, sometimes hamla. So, I'm going to give you a chance to air all those salty things as well. But just one more before that is that, I want to talk about the North-South divide, again, the state of the opposition, all of those things, the language wars that, are playing themselves out across the country. But you've been very, very visionary, KTR, about focusing on systems being really important. And I want to ask you 2 questions. One is that, you just said parties have to be kind of unitary leadership. And in India, we are actually becoming presidential more than parliamentary. So is there a kind of tension between creating a system that will last, or is it necessarily personality-based? You were just saying when we were having tea that Hyderabad and the GDP of Telangana is already dipping. And I asked you, what can have happened in 2 years that you did such wonderful work for 9 years and in 2 years it's already going down? Did you not set enough systems in place then?
Absolutely not. But if you mess with the system, of course, it's gonna. If you derail a system deliberately, it's gonna have its negative impact. Fact is, politicians, political class, governments, parties, we are all temporary. We are all transient. None of us are here. See, I am supremely glad that we've been given 9.5 years of opportunity to govern. If I end up thinking that I'm going to be there forever, I'm an idiot. I'm a very greedy idiot at that. So therefore, Today, if you ask me what should have been done and what has been done, I would say, I think one of the things we've done brilliantly, we have put institutions above individuals. We have created institutions that will outlast individuals. We have created processes that will outlive people. So, for instance, just to again, when we talk disruption, a lot of people think disruption can only happen in the tech world. No, disruption can even happen in governance, disruption can even happen in platforms like this. So therefore, in Telangana, we came out with some policy disruptions, just as an example. Any of the industrialists here who have a business in Telangana would know that we promise all clearances in 15 days. Now, but this is by statute. And if you don't deliver on the 15-day window, on the 16th day, it's a deemed approval. The same bureaucrat who's been a status quoist for the last 7 decades, for him, the paradigm is basically flipped on its head because of this new legislation that came in. If you don't deliver on the 15-day window, on the 16th day, the same bureaucrat can be fined a penalty of rupees 1,000 per day. Now, that is a true systemic disruption that has really changed Telangana's landscape in terms of industrialization. Likewise, we have created many such institutions, we have created many such systems, but of course, any system, any book, any constitution even, is only as good as the person holding it or as good as the person running the country or the state. Can you make a negative impact using the same system? Of course, yes, and that's what is seen in Telangana today. So therefore, I would humbly say that maybe freezing, maybe not allowing the political class to tamper with, not allowing them to poke their nose where it doesn't belong, is something that Indians have to impress upon our lawmakers, impress upon our governments. Like Thomas Paine very, very famously said, Shoma, every patriot's primary responsibility, primary duty, and primary allegiance to the country is to save his country from its government. That is something we all need to agree on, be it the state government here or the central government there. We cannot allow them to mess with it. And that is something I am truly, truly offended by as to what Congress is doing in Telangana.
You're giving a very easy segue actually to the next session. Not that we are stopping now, but that, Arvind and Devesh's thesis is that they've taken a Hippocratic oath that do no harm, even if you don't know how to do some good, do no harm to the economic and political system. But let me now come to the state of the opposition. We're going to have a series of very important elections in Bengal, in Tamil Nadu, there's this...
Kerala.
Yes, and there's this whole sense that the BJP is really a juggernaut that cannot be beaten. Let's, for a moment, not critique them. I will allow you that. But what is going on with the opposition? Why is the opposition in a state in India where they just can't seem to not only not do good, but also do harm at the same time? Why is it that the Mahagathbandhan doesn't hang together? Why is India become just an acronym? Why are you not making common cause? Even in Parliament right now, there's been all of this discussion about the SIR and the electoral rolls, but the opposition is not even agreed on whether this is a big enough issue to take on the government on or not. What do you think is the biggest problem facing all of you who are in opposition right now?
Well, I can't speak as a representative of the opposition because, the fundamental thing with us is we can't sit together and we can't talk together. See, for instance, the lack of unity is the biggest challenge. For instance, I'm fighting Congress in my state and BJP in my state. And then when it comes to union politics or politics in Delhi, we are asked to pick sides. We're asked to pick, whether you want to battle Congress or BJP. Now, my point is, if I'm fighting Congress in the state and BJP in Delhi, I'm still opposition, effectively. But what went wrong, if you ask me, like you said, with respect to BJP and the opposition, I'd say Congress is the largest party today in the opposition. They've failed to enthuse people, they've failed to modernize, they've failed to organize, then they've failed to present a credible alternative nationally. That's beyond doubt. And that is why BJP is getting away without any serious scrutiny. BJP is able to, win election after election because the biggest asset of Prime Minister Modi, if you ask me, is Mr. Rahul Gandhi himself. That is the reality. You can see it. So the point is, unless Congress wakes up from its deep slumber, modernizes, organizes itself, and presents itself in a form that people are able to appreciate, not much is going to change. Yes, there will be regional forces, like Mr. Stalin here or the AIA-DMK, who are able to hold off Congress and BJP in their state in Tamil Nadu, and I really salute the people of Tamil Nadu for basically challenging the central overreach, if you ask me, from both central parties. Be it West Bengal, where Didi has shown that, she's able to hold off BJP. Even in Telangana, we were able to hold off BJP and Congress for 10 years and we lost by a whisker in the last election. So it is the strong regional parties that have been able to hold off, including Kejriwal, who's won 3 terms on the trot. The biggest letdown for this country right now, since 1996 or post that, has been the Congress party, without a question. Because they're the ones who've not been able to build a coalition. They're the ones who don't seem to get off their high horse, cannot seem to understand that their days... See, look at Bihar. What went wrong? See, in Bihar, Congress is a fringe party. In Tamil Nadu, they're a fringe player. But they do not want to accept the fact. I'm sure we'll talk about how they troubled DMK in April 2026. Because the Congress always wants to bite more than what it can chew. And then eventually it helps the opposition. That's how it works all the time. Having said that, now, what is that glue that can bind us together? See, for instance, if us in Telangana and Stalin in Tamil Nadu and Didi in... We tried, by the way, my father tried very, very hard to stitch up a credible third front or a federal front, as he called it. But what we realized is there isn't anything that's binding us together other than probably a little bit of, not animosity, but probably a little bit of a common enemy kind of a factor. That is not something that is going to work in long term. So that is the biggest challenge with India. Our diversity sometimes also ends up being our challenge. So I'd say that's the biggest problem with opposition today.
So, but then that's the big question that, like you said, that the common enemy with a lot of these parties is the BJP. And I'll ask you to enumerate what about them makes them an enemy. But the other question, and very, very crucially attached to that, is that what is the alternate vision? You're saying the Congress doesn't have a vision. But let's assume that you were in Rahul Gandhi's place today. What is it that you would do which actually presents an alternative vision for India, economically, imaginatively, politically, that is radically different from what the BJP is doing?
See, caste is not the answer to the religion, vertical that BJP has latched onto. Unfortunately, Rahul Gandhi has been advised by his advisors, I guess, that, to beat BJP at its own game, which basically is polarization in the name of religion, you have to latch onto caste. And that's why he keeps talking about caste censors and how jitna abadi, utna haq, etc., etc. Somehow it has gotten into his system that this is the answer. That's not. See, like I said, Prime Minister Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, today is remembered for building institutions like IITs and IIMs. Tell me one institution that Congress has built post Prime Minister Nehru's era. I mean, there are a few which Indira Gandhi has done, but beyond that, I don't see much happening. What is the vision of Rahul Gandhi for this country till 2047? He's probably 53, 54 now. Other than sense of entitlement, I don't see much coming from Rahul Gandhi ever. See, again, don't get me wrong when I say this. What would I do? I would focus on creating more economic clusters in India. Today, if you look at India as a country, we have about 10 or 12 economic engines that are driving the prosperity in this country. Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore, and of course other metros, Bombay, Delhi, and Kolkata, and many others, Ahmedabad, etc. Have we ever seen Rahul Gandhi present a vision of how this economic prosperity can be converted into jobs, how these economic clusters can focus each of them on a separate sector, and how our institutions, the world-class institutions that we do have, the IITs, the IIMs, and even the universities, how we can scale them up and really convert this knowledge into prosperity, the young think force which has global aspirations today. I don't see Rahul Gandhi talking about startups. I don't see him talking about innovation. I don't see him talking about world-class universities and pumping more money into research and development. This is what I would start talking about. Will it win me elections? I don't know at this point in time, honestly, again. But end of the day, though, as long as you get to play a role in politics, being in public service, public life itself is a huge privilege, Shoma, be it in opposition or be it in government. When in power, you deliver. When in opposition, you listen. So therefore, I think both responsibilities you have to accept with humility, and you have to continue to build the narrative, continue to build the momentum. Given an opportunity, I would recreate, one straight answer. I would recreate what we have done in Telangana in 9.5 years across India. That's what I would do, and that would be the magic pill if you ask me.
That's a very interesting answer, and I actually want to push you further on that. So you said on an economic vision, but the Congress has also not been able to revitalize its imaginative or the big picture story, which is, in any way, there are enough people who perhaps don't like the BJP vision.
I don't think even the Congress is talking so much about themselves as much as we are talking about them.
But you just place them as the nodal, I was trying to bring you.
Unfortunate, but that's the reality. They are this albatross which keeps hanging around India's opposition's neck. We can't seem to get rid of them. But at the same time, they have become an unfortunate indispensability for this country. And I think, if you ask me, state after state, if Congress is thrown out, I think that would offer a lot of strong regional forces which will truly come in onto their own and start offering credible alternative to BJP.
So then let me ask you, how do you see the future of India panning out? Do you see the BJP running all the way down to the south? Or do you see more federal forces coming up, like you're saying? Do you see the Congress atrophying? Now that you're having a chance to listen and to reflect, what do you see going forward?
I don't think BJP is going to be able to make a huge inroad into south. While they've had their opportunity in Karnataka, they've lost it. I don't see them bouncing back in the south, at least. I think we have a lot of political parties which are extremely aligned and extremely hands-on with respect to local aspirations and local demands in the south, be it the Dravidian parties in Tamil Nadu, or be it us in Telangana. In Andhra we have YSRCP and TDP and Janasena. So likewise in Karnataka also we have regional parties. So therefore in south I don't see a great deal happening for BJP. But I do sense a certain element of despondency that's also creeping in the BJP system as well, because they've just lost 37 parliament seats in Uttar Pradesh. That must have given them a scare. They must be worried. So they will start looking at newer areas, Bengal, Tamil Nadu, which are all going up for elections next year. So what I do hope, in 2024, people of India gave BJP a scare. And I hope people of Tamil Nadu, people of West Bengal and people of Kerala give them a resounding message in 2026 that politics of partisanship, politics of polarization on religious lines will be rejected in every form, and all three states hopefully will vote against BJP and vote for strong regional parties. And that will send a resounding message across the country that this sort of politics is not acceptable and that this sort of polarization is not acceptable. Hopefully that will set the trend for 2029.
So, let's not say that, I don't want to make you the sort of ventriloquist for the Congress, but I just want to, because you put out a vision right now about the economic clusters, that just in case you had to be the chief opposition leader right now, again, is there a way that you would spell out a different vision for India, which is not the BJP's vision, but which is not just saying that, they're communal? What is the positive vision that you're putting out, which people could buy into?
Like I said, fundamentally, we've been told forever that, we were a great nation, we have great potential. Unfortunately, if we don't translate that potential into reality, if we don't translate that, great opportunity into reality, we're doing grave injustice, not just to ourselves, but future generations as well. So the one thing I would do differently, if given an opportunity as chief opposition, there is 70,000 TMCs of water in India today, running across our rivers, in the Gangetic Plains, in Yamuna, in Kaveri, in Krishna, Godavari. The first thing I would do is create a master plan for India in terms of how this 70,000 TMCs of water can be leveraged for the 40 crore acres of arable land in India, and how, in a meaningful fashion, in less than 3 or 4 years, within a 5-year span, how each of these infrastructure projects can create manifold wealth for our farmers. That's the first thing I present. Secondly, I do a potable drinking water connection into every home has become a reality in Telangana. No other state in India so far has delivered on that promise. I would promise within 3 to 4 years a potable drinking water connection to each and every home. Our urban agglomerations such as Chennai and Hyderabad have the humongous potential to create economic prosperity for millions and millions of people. I would invest heavily in public transportation, public health, public education, and create an agenda basically which will not only add infrastructure, but also create great deal of economic prosperity and millions of jobs. Lastly, I would say, that famous John F. Kennedy saying, which goes, a lot of people think America has great infrastructure because it has good, it is rich. But it's in fact the exact opposite. America is rich because it has great infrastructure. There is no substitutes. Today, just to give you an example, Shoma, Canadian Pension Fund is investing heavily in India. The Life Insurance Corporation of India has almost, my friend Tyaga was here somewhere, I think has more than 50 lakh crores of deposits sitting somewhere in the bank. Canadian pension fund is being invested into infrastructure, public transport, metros, etc. in India. But Indian pensioners' money is laying eggs in our banks here. Why are we not able to judiciously use what is at our disposal? Not only our pension funds, but several other humongous assets which are heavily under-leveraged. India needs bold, future-ready, progressive politics of development. Development has to become a policy, not an election season politics. So if you were to ask me, I would lay out my agriculture agenda, my energy agenda, my urban agenda, my rural agenda, and probably go to each and every sector, hold town halls in each and every large metro, small metro, and probably try and deliver as much as I can in terms of premise and promise.
Thank you so much. As I was laughing that the last time I did a session with PTR, he got a standing ovation in Delhi, and that didn't go too well for him. So I hope that your visionary statements here don't boomerang on you. But
no, I hope he wins back. People like him, honestly, people like him are a must in Indian politics. People like him should win back. And it should not look like, because see, it should not look like somebody who's got that intellectual capacity cannot come back electorally. And that would really be a huge setback. So I do hope any of you voters from Madurai here, I don't know, I'm rooting for PTR there, Tyaga there, is a dear friend of mine. So I do hope he'll win back and come back. Yeah.
Yes. Just because we have you here, we're, like you said, people say that they don't like political leaders and they don't like politicians, but I'm not one of those. Actually, I think it's the toughest job on the planet. And I want to ask you for a personal sort of insight that, what is the most difficult thing about being a political leader?
Can I be blunt? I'm sure we're being recorded, and I'm sure this is going to go out social media and I'll be trolled heavily. Biggest challenge, unfortunately, in India is to put up with our mediocre bureaucracy. They're extremely status quoist, they're resistant to change, and they live and thrive in ambivalence and ambiguity. And to change them, biggest challenge. The problem is ever since License Raj, for those of you who remember License Raj, they're used to sitting in ivory towers, our bureaucrats, and people going and begging and pleading with them. Now, if you tell them to work differently and change differently and start thinking differently, they're heavily resistant. And the biggest challenge is they look at us politicians who are elected as people who are only elected for 5 years. So in his mind, the bureaucrat is thinking, okay, this guy is only here for 5 years, I'm here for 50 years. So why should I listen to him? The fact is, in a democracy, it is the dog that should wag the tail and not the tail wagging the dog. This is something I absolutely believe is the biggest challenge. And second biggest challenge in politics today, this is going to go horribly wrong, but I'm going to still say it, our judiciary.
Is?
Judiciary. We have 5 million pending cases. And look at what they are taking up. There is no expeditious justice delivery system in India. We keep talking about ease of doing business, ease of entry into the country, ease of entry into a state. But then there should also be an ease of exit, if there is a problem. Judiciary should come to your rescue, dispute redressal mechanism should be there. That doesn't exist in our country. So therefore, these are the two biggest challenges, if you ask me. And of course, putting up with, like I said, mediocrity among bureaucracy really tops the charts.
So just one last, I would say almost hard question, is that another political leader once told me that for him, the most difficult thing was that he said, once you're in the seat of power, you're surrounded by so many sort of rent seekers that they almost make it natural for you to be corrupt, that it's just not possible. Like you almost lose your perspective and your radar on what is corrupt and what is not. So one, that have you found it difficult to keep your radar and what is political corruption, what is personal corruption? And sadly, you spoke of the Kaleshwaram Dam as a point of pride. You asked everyone to Google it. But there's CBI cases against your party and you and your father over that very particular dam on corruption, So again, both at a philosophical level and on this particular case.
No, I'll probably start with the Kaleshwaram one first, We'll talk philosophy later. See, I'll tell you what. The funniest part is this. So this project, Kaleshwaram, like I said, is a project which irrigates 45 lakh acres. We completed it in 4 years, a record breakneck speed. Every project in India takes decades. We completed it in 4 years, in and out. Now, Congress party comes in, including the big man, Rahul Gandhi himself, comes in and starts accusing of us of a 1 lakh crore scam. The entire amount of money that was spent on building this project was 92,000 crores. But Rahul Gandhi comes in and sets the narrative that this is a 1 lakh crore scam. I know that he's poor at many things, but I did not think math was one of them. Now, the problem is, somehow the narrative sticks. In India, the thing is, when you're accused, see,
in all fairness to them, the BJP brought them down by saying the telecom scam was a 1 lakh crore scam. And Kapil Sibal said it was a zero crore scam, So that stayed in their minds as a good political weapon.
Shoma, all I would say is, end of the day, we're all, Indians. We love our country. We may not love government of India, but we love our country. We love India. But when we have within India, when we have people like Rahul Gandhi, who's supposed to be, or who's a wannabe prime minister, who belongs to this family which has had 4 prime ministers in the country, before he speaks, he should double check, he should cross check, and he should be a leader, not a reader. He can't read scripts. Yeah? Somebody gives him a script, he reads out. That's irritating, firstly. And second point is, yes, have you had temptations? Have you had, the challenge? Whether I accept it or not, when I went to meet the Chief Election Commissioner and his 2 other election commissioners recently, 2-3 months ago, when SIR in Bihar was being talked about, we are the first party in India to reach out and basically call it a farce. So when I went to him, and this was a closed door meeting, I did tell him, I said, not a single MLA, not a single MP in this country is elected within the mandatory expenditure limit that you have set. Do you know that? He said, yes. In a closed door meeting, I would say yes. The fact is, any political party which is going in for an election has to spend money. The limits today, as prescribed by Election Commission of India, are unrealistic. I would not say more than that, otherwise cases would be filed on me tomorrow. So it is a fundamental reality in India. Like I said, economic bankruptcy of our people, intellectual bankruptcy of political class is a reality. It's a deadly cocktail. Am I above it? No, certainly not. I am one among them. We are riding a tiger. Unfortunately, it's a vicious cycle. We are riding a tiger.
Riding a tiger.
Riding a tiger because, it's a vicious cycle. For a politician, who's out of government, out of power, the fundamental objective is to come back, to crawl back. Now, how do I do that? Come out with ridiculous allegations like 1 lakh crore on a 92,000 crore project. So, am I above the pettiness of what politics has become? Not really. But at the end of the day, though, I think if you ask me, am I still willing to work with Congress or BJP on larger national issues or state issues? Of course, yes. So I think we have to start drawing lines. We have to start understanding the realities of politics. Have I been above and beyond the temptations of being in power? No, I will be honest. So therefore, yes, we have run elections. That's the way BJP and Congress has been running it, just the way DMK, Anna DMK has been running it, like any other political party in India. And I will not say that I'm running a mutt, sannyas ashram or something. We are running a political party and we have to be aligned with realities. We have certainly not been above any other party in terms of what happens in elections. But I can tell you with great deal of confidence and authority that we've been able to make an indelible impression, a very emphatic impression on my state. And it is now the Congress which is running the show, and I hope they continue to do the good work. That's all I hope.
Well, thank you very much, KTR. That was a very big and honest admission to make, but for a moment I thought this was my ring till I saw there's a price tag attached to it.
I could hold on to that for you if you want. I'm a politician, remember? So,
yeah. But thank you very much. And just absolutely last question, which I wanted you to do in one line. Because, we've been sort of speaking about Rahul Gandhi and the Congress, and
we're still on this topic?
No. I was saying it's a strange situation where, you dump more on the opposition even more than the government or the ruling party. But you said earlier that there were many things that, you make the BJP a common enemy. So if you were to list 2 or 3 things that you dislike about them, but at the same time, and I had asked you that question in the beginning, what are they doing right that makes them win election after election? I think that analysis would be very interesting.
Well, the first and foremost thing is BJP has let down this country in the last 10 years, without a question, because, they made tall promises. Remember, all the promises now, at least reminding them of the promises now, even that seems like, an anti-national thing to do, so to speak. Because if I remind somebody that Prime Minister Modi promised every Indian a home by 2022 and it has not happened, I will be called an anti-national. If I remind my friends from BJP or even anybody else that Prime Minister Modi promised a 5 trillion economy by 2022, that did not happen, I'll be branded as anti-national. If I remind my BJP friends that, portable drinking water connection to each and every home did not happen, the 5 trillion economy, the farmers' income doubling, etc., none of these have been delivered. What did they deliver in the last 10 years or 11 years, so to speak? I'd say they've delivered politics of hate, they've delivered politics of divisive nature to almost every Indian home today, and politics of huge divide. So there is not a lot to like in BJP, if you ask me. Unfortunately, what works for them is one simple thing. They've mastered the art of polarizing and setting the narrative. And unfortunately, we as opposition have not been able to counter it productively and effectively. That is a hard fact. They've really mastered the art of polarization. Us versus them is a narrative that they drive brilliantly, and they're relentless, just like you, persistent. And that is something, something.
This is the first time I've been presented as a parallel to the BJP.
No, you. I wish. No, I'm saying they're as relentless, as persistent, and I'll tell you what I admire in them though. There are a lot of things I don't like in them. They won Gujarat election. They won the Uttar Pradesh election. The very next day they're out in a rally in Gujarat. They're relentless. I saw Chief Minister of Delhi, Rekha Gupta, leading a campaign rally for a by-election in Delhi municipality. Now you have a Chief Minister campaigning for a municipal corporation by-poll for a single division. That is unheard of. So these are the things that make BJP. You like them, hate them, they're relentless, they're always at you. They're constantly trying to up their game, and that is something we all can take draw inspiration from and take a few leaps.
In all fairness, yes, their endeavor is incredible, but I also want to say that if there was another, sort of ally of the BJP on stage, they would have trotted out a lot of numbers as well on what they've done and not done. So I just want to put that on.
They will tell you only 3 things. They'll talk about Pakistan, they'll talk about Bangladesh, they'll talk about Hindus and Muslims. Beyond that it is beyond their comprehension. Trust me when I say this.
Okay. Since you're the person on stage, I'm going to give you an easy ticket on that. But they would have brought up some economic figures as well. But for the moment, I'm going to park that because I'm going to invite the economists on stage.
We did phenomenally well, sir.
Just for those who couldn't hear, the question was, has the growth they created, was it inclusive? Because they've never got the bottom 10% vote in Telangana.
I'm not quite sure I understand the bottom 10% question, but I'll tell you one thing. On the multi-dimensional poverty index, we are the state which has reduced highest amount of poverty. This is not my metric, you can go look it up, sir. Highest amount in the last 1 decade, number 1. Number 2, the bottom 10%, see, the total polled vote for my party in 2014 was about 39%. In 2018, it was 47%. So, in fact, if anything, our vote share has increased significantly, and most of it came from rural areas. And no, I don't know how to quantify that, honestly, if there is a metric. But we've been winning elections. The last one was an anomaly in my mind. We're just a 1.8% with a 4 lakh difference in a 4 crore population. I don't think that's a big setback or a big defeat. In fact, I take a lot of pride in not yielding to the temptation. When Congress was promising the moon to the people, we didn't yield to the temptation. When they said free bus for women, we didn't yield to it. We said the corporation is in losses, we're not going to do that. So had we done a few of those, maybe we could have also won elections. You know, when Prime Minister Modi says freebie culture is bad, I honestly really thought at one point maybe he's serious. But when I saw in Bihar, he gave 1.2 crore women 10,000 rupees right before the election. And he's won the election. 71% of the women. Would you call that bottom 10% coming out and voting? I don't know. But the point, sir, is the point.
Sorry, sir, I'm going to have to stop this because we're on to our next session. But
Cheers.
KTR, thank you very much for being
much.
such a collaborative partner. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. We're going to flow right into the next session. Because it's a rainy day, we are holding you captive right here. We have two other absolutely really powerful speakers. But before that, I just want to take 1 minute of your attention to share with you that we've been talking about technology in the new economic era. And as we've shared with you before, we have created a conference called Synapse, where we bring together some of the most cutting-edge minds across the world in biotechnology, in AI, in robotics, in neuroscience, because, as we said, we really feel that everyone who's a decision maker in India needs to be aware of and engage with, celebrate, adapt, debate the forces of change that are so exponentially sweeping across the world. So I'm just going to take 2 minutes to show you a little teaser about Synapse. Our dates are 21st and 22nd of February. It's at the Meridian in Gurgaon. Our website is open. It's synapseconclave.com. The tickets are available for selling. So please do. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers. I'm going to show you this quick teaser, and then we're going to go right into the next session and then stop for a cocktail break after that. So I'll just ask the console to show it. I'm Shoma Chaudhary. I'm the founder of Lucid Lines. Thank you. Not every generation gets to be living at a time when there's a pivotal change in a civilization itself. How do you train a machine with culture and empathy and values?
Okay, Sophia. I think you're ready.
What does this even mean, that we have to participate in automation? After we enable the machine, what's going to happen to society? Is it really Silicon Valley that's the new military? What does it mean to be human if you're 99% bacteria? How do you define AGI? And you're inside the belly of the beast. What is your timeline on it?
Trying to start a global movement for all of us to reclaim our right to cognitive liberty.
Humans are good. We're deeply good, but we're also a mess.
How do we share our income in society if we can't rely upon the world of work to do it?
We're going through, in effect, two climate changes in once. One in the change of the climate, and one in the change of the climate of technology.
If you are asking me as a scientist, I will say we are just scratching the surface of what we know about the universe.
The real existential risk for humanity is not that a robot comes here and kills us all. The real existential risk is that we all become insane.
AI is one more proof of the uniqueness of consciousness, and I'll tell you why.
I think that's brilliant.
Mind-blowing.
Wonderfully curated.
It's superb, superb.
Absolutely incredible.
Very exciting.
It's mind-blowing.
Amazing job.
No, I don't like it. I love it.
Mind-blowing.
Great speakers.
Connects people.
This is an amazing conference.
This is completely unique. I've never seen anything like it. Shoma is just a force of nature.
You are absolutely a force of nature. Congratulations for this exceptional conference.
And with that, we're going to go right into our next session. This is a really, really crucial session because it both looks back at the history of India, helps us understand how we got here, but it also looks forward to where we need to head. And like I said, that was a prelude to that conversation, but this, in a way, dives even deeper, both at the economic and political history of India and where we are headed. Arvind Subramaniam has been the Chief Economic Advisor of India. He's also one of the world's most renowned economists. He's taught at Harvard and at Johns Hopkins and elsewhere. Devesh Kapoor is again a very, very renowned political scientist who's done immense amount of work on India, even on particularly our migrant communities, and like we've been saying, the lower 10% as well. They've now written a book called 1/6 of Humanity, which is really what India is, and where we've come from over these last 75 years of our republic, and where we are headed. To discuss that, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Arvind Subramaniam and Devesh Kapoor on stage. Also, I'll ask the Lucid Lines team to please usher everybody who's outside in. We'll stop for a cocktail break and snacks and dinner after this. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much, both of you. You know, that's a really important and giant book that you've written. You know, I want to just delve into it a little bit first, Arvind, that what was the premise of going back these 75 years? You know, what is it that you really wanted to diagnose about India? And if you were to distill this giant of a book, like I said, down to 4 or 5 key points, when you looked over its entire history, what was that?
So first of all, Shoma, thanks for having us, and thanks to all of you who've shown up in this rainy, inclement weather. So I think there were two parts to your question. Why did we write this, and what is the, as you would say, the elevator pitch of this book? Yes. And I need Devesh's help because these are not easy questions. I mean, I think why we wrote this was because I think we felt that there was a gap in what existed out there on India. In the following sense, that, you know, development is something that's multifaceted. And most previous attempts at doing this for India, and there are some great works on India, you know, Bhagwati and Desai, Shukamoy Chakravarti, lots of people have written, political scientists have written this. But because Devesh and I felt that development is a much broader task, especially for a nascent country like India, you know, you have to forge a nation, a new nation, right? It's very easy to have a geography, but to create, you know, you've created India, but you have to create Indians. How was that done? You have to create, in fact, reconfigure a colonial state into a modern developmental state. You have to build an economy, and you have to change society. So you have to analyze all these, and uniquely in the case of India, all this was done through democratic politics on a country, as it were, that's the largest in the world in scale and arguably the most diverse. So it's just a complex transformational problem, and we felt that this hadn't been attempted for India. And, you know, economists have a very narrow view, political scientists have a narrow view, and we thought we'd bring together our thing to do this, you know, big effort at so that's the real reason we did that.
Right.
On the elevator pitch, Devesh, do you want to go first, or you, and then I'll follow because.
So you know, there's you asked like why we wrote the book. So to quote John F.
Sorry,
Kennedy,
will you just speak into the mic?
Okay. You asked why we wrote the book. So one way to answer it, like Kennedy said, why not? You
why
asked
not?
why? Yeah, I mean, I think we both had a palpable sense of dissatisfaction with what was out there. I think academia has become very narrow. I mean, we are really confined to within our disciplines. But of course, what happens on the ground, realities, they don't follow these tight disciplines.
Right.
And both of us come with very varied academic backgrounds. And so to think through this was as much an intellectual joy and journey for us. I think what we were determined was, one, not to go in with any preconceived notions that this was the story, but to make sure that we really build data on almost every aspect of development and allow the story to come through the data rather than have a story and look for data to back our priors. So
Right.
that was one difference. The second difference was we did not want to judge the past through the lens of the present. It's very easy, that old saying from Hegel, the owl of Minerva flies at dusk.
Sorry, Devesh, I'm going to ask.
The owl of Minerva flies at dusk. It's very easy to say, oh, Nehru did this wrong, or this was that. So what we build is a set of about 3,000 plus official government reports and documents on every aspect, and read through how they were seeing it at that point of time. What were the constraints they were seeing? How were they seeing their reality, rather than for us to see it and make these judgments? So these were the two, I think, distinctive approaches we brought to this project.
But to answer, build on what Devesh said, what's the elevator pitch of the book, So the first thing is that I think we strenuously stayed clear of trying to be reductive about what happened in the past. So it's very easy to say, oh, it's all about economics, or it's all about politics, or it's all about this. And India, the historical experience, has just been too complex, too rich, and too textured to fall into any easy generalization. But having said that, we do have one or two big themes that run through the book. And one of them is what we describe as in the term precocious.
Precocious.
Okay? So there are two or three senses in which we use the term precocious. One is, if you look at politics, India was a precocious democracy, i.e. it adopted democracy unlike other countries. See, there are two models of development around the world. One model, which is the Western model, is where you have slow economic progress and political development and the franchise happens slowly and along with economic progress. The other model is the East Asian model, very successful economically over very shorter periods of time, but the political development follows the economic development, like in Korea or Taiwan, or doesn't happen at all, as in the case of China. And India just defied this model completely. So that's the sense in which it's precocious. It's also precocious, which we can go into in the fact that we did services much more than manufacturing. But there's an even deeper sense in which we define precociousness, is that the Indian policy setup made some very unusual choices, like, for example, emphasizing higher education over basic education, emphasizing disease control and population control over public health, emphasizing welfare and redistribution over creating public goods like infrastructure, health, etc. So the bottom line, I would say, is that India is just a fascinating development experience, partly captured in this precocious concept, but much richer than that as well.
I want to open up some of those, but I wanted to share with the audience, because quite often now there's a great impatience with the economic history of India, and there's also a very fashionable position that Nehru got it totally wrong. But, and I'd love to hear your perspective on that before we go to the future. But just 2-3 data points which are really, sobering and make you wake up, is that when, in 1947, there were only 18% of Indians who were literate. The life expectancy was 32, and every woman's, birth rate was about 6 children to a woman. So that's and then of course there was all the wounds of partition and a feudal, poor, impoverished state that we took up. So to give adult franchise overnight was really, like you said, a precocious idea and not been done anywhere in the world. So when you diagnose this, I wanted to, and the reason I'm asking you to distill such a big book is because I want to also look at what your prognosis is for the future. But when you diagnose this, first, do you think that that was a mistake, to give political agency overnight, regardless of caste, class, education, gender, race, religion? Do you think that that was a sublime thing that has played out, or was it a mistake?
So, look, we are very clear in the book that we shouldn't make the democracy this shibboleth that it gave and it took away. But the unique part of what democracy did for India, what we say in the book, very distinctive from what it did say in the West, it was the key instrument of nation building. I think we really underestimate just how hard the challenge of building nationhood in such a diverse society is. So many large countries, federal systems, whether the Soviet Union or Yugoslavia or civil wars that we see in Nigeria or we've seen in Sudan, etc. We really show that India, contrary to what people think, stands out that in the process of nation building, how little violence there was. India is a complete outlier. We can look at England, we can look at France, we can look at China, we can look at the US. All these countries had massive amounts of violence in the process of nation building. India avoided that, and it avoided that because it did not choose a single religion or single language as the basis of nation building. Instead, it chose democracy as the instrument of nation building.
So just to add to what Devesh said, two things to say. See, one is that people often ask this question, democracy, whatever, good, bad, why did we choose? To me, I think if you look at it historically, India had no choice but to adopt democracy. It was hardwired, partly for the reasons that Devesh just said, but also, if you go back in 1928, there was a Motilal Nehru Committee report. It was actually a report written by Motilal Nehru and some people, and Pandit Nehru also joined that. In 28, this is very early on, they discussed whether India should have universal political franchise, and they came down saying, of course, there is no alternative but to choose universal, even for women. And the arguments they gave dismissing not having this, were amazing and way ahead of its time. So in a sense, the question is almost irrelevant because it was hardwired. But having said that, Devesh spoke about all the good things that democracy did, but we should also not be under any illusions that democracy is this great panacea for everything, because in the last chapter of the book, we say democracy is a little bit like liquid oxygen, that famous quote from that movie, the liquid doesn't allow you to die, but the oxygen,
No, the opposite. Oxygen doesn't allow you to die.
So democracy is that heady oxygen, but it also actually held back India in several ways. Just to give you one example.
That's like setting a shiver down my spine that we are actually publicly saying this. No, it's such a dangerous idea.
No, I think we have to be realistic because nothing is comes
written in stone.
Or written in stone or completely
not black
without
and white.
thing. Just to give you, there are many ways in which it did that. But just to take one example, corruption is a big fact of Indian politics, right? But what has happened in India is that we now, so this is a statistic we give in the book, that the average time between elections, which used to be 5 years in the first 30 years, is now just over 1 year. So that almost every year we're having massive elections. Elections now need more and more money. And just this facet of democracy, contributes to and, becomes a point for corruption, which has deleterious effects on the system. But so I think we should celebrate our democracy, but we should also not be blind to some of the challenges it's posed, and there are many.
Right. Okay.
Just a quick thing. See, I think we should be careful. We often use the term the democracy, and we all think we know exactly what it means. But actually we don't. We have reduced democracy to elections. That is the fundamental lens through which we think about democracy. Of course, it has many other facets which we've tended to underplay, whether it's civil liberties, rule of law, all of these other...
No, the constitutional...
Right. I mean, I think as we look back, one of the biggest weaknesses in the Indian Constitution, which was a fabulous document, was it never defined political parties. And one of the biggest weaknesses, and you talked about with the speaker earlier, the fact that political parties have become like family-owned businesses, is because surprisingly, the word political party is not even mentioned in the Constitution. But of course, you cannot have elections without political parties. And the governance of political parties in India has fewer rules than a small-scale enterprise has. Even though these are the, that they should have internal democracy, they should have transparent accounts, all the things that if a company doesn't file its annual returns for 3 years, it can be struck off. Political parties just go on. So there are weaknesses, and we would be...
Actually, that's a really good, innovative idea, that political parties should have rules, for existing, That's a powerful idea to put out. But I just want to come back to, when you said that democracy was not economically, as proficient for India, I again want you to spell that out a little bit, Arvind, because there is this sense, almost a kind of yearning that we took the China route, or that immediately one should have gone from colonialism to capitalism. So there's a great impatience with the socialist years of India. There are others who will argue that the Nehruvian generation may not have taken us on the fast train of economic progress, but it kind of deepened the idea of the nation state, participation, a sense of the collective, and that, economic progress could have come later. Maybe Indira Gandhi should have shifted gear. So when two questions, one, that do you think democracy was not proficient? And second, that again, there's this nostalgia that we should have gone straight away into capitalism. Do you think that that would have been a better route for India?
Yeah. So let me kind of combine these two questions. See, part of looking back with a kind of generous perspective, that is, you neither romanticize the past, nor you have the condescension of posterity, because you have to look at what happened at that time. Now, there were some choices made at that time which reflected what many, many countries around the world were doing. So whether it was planning, whether it was shutting us off to foreign competition, the whole protectionism, whether it was emphasizing public sector enterprises, that these were all part of the thinking of that era. Well, remember, the US had just had the New Deal, England, Europe had turned towards the welfare state. Russia at that point, the Soviet Union, we thought was doing very well. So there were some choices that were, I think, understandable, given the intellectual zeitgeist of the times. But there were some choices that we made which were neither democratic nor socialist in any strict sense of the term. I'll give you one example. Take industrial licensing, that is what we did to our domestic private sector. There was nothing about socialism or democracy that required us to do that, right? But we did that.
So the whole license Raj.
The license. And remember, this is not licenses to import or to trade. These were licenses that
produce
domestic private sector. So we stymied our domestic private sector, which set us back, 30 years. The other thing is that not emphasizing primary education and public health. Now, I think that's a choice that may have been due to democracy. We don't know. Devesh thinks that most autocracies provided education. But that was something that had much more to do with our society and our caste structure and nothing to do with democracy per se. So in that sense, the choices that were made were partly reflected the zeitgeist. The final thing I would say is that, but the tragedy of India, even in terms of those choices that went wrong, was not that we got into it, which is understandable, that over time we were not able to get out of it. So the central Indian challenge or problem, as it were, over these is what we would call the Chakravyuha challenge. Like Abhimanyu can get in, but he can't get out. Like in the case of the public sector enterprises, the farm subsidies, and so on.
Right.
So, just to illustrate one example, we use these terms without ever questioning socialism. So we give you an example in the book, the Heavy Engineering Corporation. Some of you might, this was the time of setting up heavy industries. We set up this firm in the early 1960s. It was supposed to supply the heavy machinery for cement plants, for steel mills, etc. We took about 5,000 acres of land from tribals. We paid them about 1,000 rupees per acre. Even that, we did not give them the money for years. Then that firm, in the 65 odd years it has been in existence, did not make a profit in any single year. Eventually, we found it did make a profit in 1 year. It made a considerable amount of profit. How did it make a profit? It sold 100 plus acres of land that it took from tribals for about 1,000 rupees an acre and sold it for 1 crore per acre. This is what we call socialism. How in the hell can one define this as socialism?
So, in fact, you have another very shocking, anecdote in your book about the fertilizer subsidies, where for every ingredient there was a different subsidy. For NKP, there's a different subsidy, different ingredients, different inputs. So it is Kafkaesque, in that sense.
But sorry, Shoma, on the fertilizer subsidy, you use the past tense. What we say in the book is that this is not what happened. This is the regime today on the fertilizer subsidy. It is the most complex system of human imagination that even Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva could not have thought of. And yet, it is still there today. So as they say, the past is never dead.
And also, vastly, most of the subsidies, fertilizers, meant for quote-unquote farmers, goes to the top 5–10% of the farmers. So the rich get most of the subsidies, whether it is electricity, whether it is fertilizers, and we continually try and defend it.
So I want to,
No, see, so it's an important point about this is because there is nothing about democracy. You can say democracy, give free power to the poor, give free subsidies to the poor, for poor farmers. But 60 to 70% of all these subsidies go to 5 to 10% of the population. There is nothing about either democracy or socialism that justifies that.
Yeah, so I'm going to come to the new era where you say a lot of macro infrastructure has been created and the new welfareism. But 2 things before that. One, just coming back to the election question earlier, that now there's a lot of talk and acceleration to one nation, one election. You said that the entire cycle of election has got compressed. So are both of you in favor of one nation, one election? And there's the, the anxiety around it is that now there's a plurality of voices. you know, there's a kind of check and balance that happens. Society has a safety valve every now and then. But if it is one nation, one election, yes, it'll be more efficient, but that it'll become even easier to centralize the entire execution of the elections and the public mood. So where do both of you stand on that?
No, I think we are very clear in the book that, that there is no doubt that the frequency, because remember, after the 73rd, 74th Amendment, we now have local elections, right? Both rural and urban, which have vastly increased the number of elections. And with that, very importantly, the need to raise money. You cannot have a democracy without elections. You cannot have elections without cash. And that cash has to be now raised day in and day out, the more frequent the elections. We simply cannot avoid that reality. However, it is also the case that each level, federal, state, and local, acts as a little bit of check on the tier above it, right? So what we argue, what we don't realize, local elections are conducted by state election commissions. If you think there are problems with the Central Election Commission, have a look at what the state election commissions are doing. They make the Central Election Commission look positively virtuous. Okay? We focus too much on what happens at the center. We forget just how authoritarian many of our states are. We forget just how badly the institutions they run are. And therefore, they have stymied the 73rd and especially 74th Amendment. So what we argue is that have at least the central and local elections concurrently and state elections separately, so that the state elections are a check on the center and the local elections, by not being concurrent with the state elections, are a check on the states.
So I think that I would say, I would generalize it by saying that, look, that there's a trade-off between all the benefits that you said that come from multiple elections and the costs associated with that. And there has to be some trade-off between that, which this idea is one of many ways of doing it. But the key point is that you have to trade off the benefits and the costs. And so no extreme solution is good, you know, either one or the current system, some trade-off, some balance.
Right. So, you know, when you were talking about all these mistakes that were made, or, you know, things that were done in the name of socialism just ended up being not that you're distributing wealth or equalizing, you know, the benefits of society, but that you were nationalizing it, you know. But strangely, both of you make an argument that it's not that one can think academically or theoretically or with a vision for a new way of doing it. You said that in India, all the economic sort of pivots have come out of a state of shock. What do you mean by that? And why is that a necessity? You know, like today, I mentioned earlier to KTR that across the world, there's an anxiety that we're entering a completely new economic reality, you know, where if all these technological forces deliver as they are being said to deliver, then countries like ours will be in a serious state of shock. But that there's no frontal thinking about it. And you said right across Indian history, there hasn't been. We've changed because of circumstances and shock. Can you explain that?
Actually, what we say in the book that is that, you know, just to preface that, why that's important. In the very last chapter, we're asked for, I mean, we say, all of you will say, oh, you know, we've written about the past, tell us 3 things for the future.
I do feel that.
Yeah, you feel that. And we, again, consciously resisted that. And the reason is that it comes out of this humility of understanding the past. We see from the past that there have been 3 agents, among others, I'm just summarizing, of what led to real change. One is crisis. We know that the 91 crisis, because we ran short of foreign exchange, is that when we really shifted from socialism to a more market-oriented economy one. We should not forget in 1966, because of the major crisis we had of the war, is when we shifted to the to the green revolution and adopting new technologies for agriculture. So these were two major changes that happened because of crises. The second way in which has happened is technology. Technology, the best example is the telecom the mobile revolutions happened, and we can talk about it. But the third, I think, thing which I think is not appreciated enough is that economic growth itself was one of the major agents of change in India. So let me explain what that is, right? One, between, let's say, 1980 and 2015, we saw the greatest reduction in poverty in India. Two, the major improvements in health and education, especially in terms of learning, happened in this era because growth provided the resources for the central and state governments to spend more. But more importantly, because people themselves realized that growth meant that the returns to education went up, and therefore they sought education, private tuition, private schools, and so on. So, and of course, Devesh has written about how growth facilitated social change in India. The whole delinking of occupations from caste. Once there was mobility and growth, you could have that. So, crises, technology, and the consequences of growth itself were the big actors or drivers of change in India.
So, I am going to ask you for some recommendations as well. But while we are still diagnosing the past, like I said, because there's this impatience in India with where we are at, and we look at where China is at, but we don't want to go live in China. You still would prefer to live in disintegrating America rather than China. So the thing I'd like to ask is that when you look at this whole analysis of the past, are you somewhat satisfied with where we are? Given, like you said, this completely precocious, unprecedented nature of the Indian experiment, and from where we came to where we are, do you think that in the long run we've done pretty well?
Sorry, are you saying that after writing the book, we are satisfied with where India is today?
Yeah.
Is that a rhetorical question?
No, I genuinely ask that because there's such an impatience to want to become authoritarian, to do away with the mess of democracy, etc., etc.
No,
so with the mess of all this,
no, that's a step. I mean, one is the means to the ends. You're talking about the means, but if we are looking at
the outcome,
at the outcome, I think absolutely we are not. I'm certainly not. But that is a very different question from how can we do better, and what are the instruments, what are the means. So these are two very different.
Right.
No, but on the outcomes themselves, I think what we show in the last chapter of the book, I mean, just look at two basic outcomes, right, which we care about: per capita GDP. If there were 100 countries in the world, in 1950, we were about, 70th or whatever, Today, by 1980, we had deteriorated. And today, we're just marginally better. We're still well below the median in terms of global per capita GDP. We're about 60th in the rank. So how can you be satisfied with that? On the Human Development Index, we similarly show over 75 years, is that we have again probably again even a little bit worse, bottom 30% of the countries in the world. So these are all not satisfactory outcomes by any means at all. But then, again, you can't be reductive because, even in terms of outcomes, the fact that we've avoided violence that Devesh mentioned earlier, the fact that, compared to other countries in the world, there is still a sense of nationhood. We're still Indians despite attempts at polarization. Many countries just disintegrated because of that. So always, the balance sheet will always be a little bit mixed, but on the pure economic and social human development outcomes, we have, if anything, underperformed.
Right, so that brings me to the question, you've engaged very deeply with China, and Devesh, like you said, absolutely, in absolute terms, there's no way any of us can be happy with where India is on any of the indices that we care about. starting with air pollution, and you ended your book with that, and we'll come to it. But without borrowing the authoritarianism of China, what is it that could have been done differently and can be done differently still? You said that from 1991, growth just brought its own momentum, You're saying that we're still really low on all the indices, but we are positioning ourselves as the fastest growing economy, the 5th largest, soon to be the 3rd largest. So what is it that's still going wrong? So I'm putting many questions. One, what can we learn from China, which is not authoritarianism? And two, what were the mistakes that have been made even after 1991, that with 25, 30 years of growth now, we still haven't done what China achieved in 30 years?
So I think one of the things that we really, really can learn from China, they are surprisingly much more open to learning, much more compared to us. I mean, I've been amazed that how open they are to ideas about how to improve compared to our self-satisfaction, which is a bit of smugness. And smugness is they are always impatient that they are not yet at the top. We are happy in wallowing in our mediocrity. Let's be very clear. And their ability to learn and learn constantly is extraordinary. And unless you are open to learning, this has got nothing to do with authoritarianism, Sorry?
Sorry? Okay, sorry. We'll continue this and open it up to your question later, please. Okay. Ads, would you just help us manage that, please? Yes. I'm going to come back to you. I'll come back to you. Okay. That's really triggered you. Will you just... Okay. Yeah. So if you were... Okay, this has never happened before.
Okay. Sorry,
This is the most emphatic agreement anyone could have with you. You said learning and you're in a loop about learning. Yeah, so to come back, you said that the Chinese are really open to learning that we're not.
Yeah, and I think that part is something that is very, very...
Okay. Is he with somebody? Can someone help usher our guest out, please? Okay. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, why don't you? I've lost my chain of thought.
Yeah, the question I'd asked was, what can we learn from China that is not authoritarianism?
So one is learning. See, but I would, put it the following way, right? One is we need to say learn from the outside, right? But one of the things we show in the book, and this relates to your previous discussion as well, which is a statistic that surprised us a lot, that 1/3 of India, and this is an important statistic, grew at almost Chinese rates of growth and for almost as long. So this is basically peninsular India. So the question then becomes not why did we not learn from the Chinese and the outside world, but why did the Hindi heartland not learn from the experiences within the country, from Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Gujarat, Maharashtra, etc., right? So I think, so that's one thing. And just to give you one example, is that we say that you should look at the past so that you don't repeat the mistakes. But I think you also should look at the past to see what were the successes and the lessons from the successes. Let me give you one example. That between 1990 and 2015-20, by all accounts, the more open we became, the better we did. And that's true not at the central level. If you look at the states, all the successful states, they are much more open than the other states, whether it's manufacturing or services or labor like in Kerala, more outward oriented. But think of this, the Congress party that presided over this, now in all its manifesto, never once talks about growth, openness, productivity, efficiency. It's nothing about increasing the size of the pie and only reducing, about redistributing it. This government, in beginning 2017, it unlearned the lessons of the past and started becoming more protectionist. Of course, it's changing now. But why is it that we don't even learn from our successes? Forget about learning from our failures.
So
Yes.
now I remember. So there are two other very distinctive aspects of China.
Will you speak into
Yeah, sorry. One is the extraordinary emphasis on higher education, meaning really building great universities for the creation of new knowledge. We really tend to blame the center and this government for doing this to our universities. But let's be clear, the destruction of India's higher education occurred at the states. Every state has deeply politicized, and I have to say that also includes this state. Every state really did politics in its public universities, and it destroyed the key foundation both of social mobility as well as of knowledge creation. The second is, we should also look at our private sector. India is an outlier among all large countries in that the share of the private sector in R&D is the lowest. I'm not talking of absolute amounts. I'm talking of share the government spends, the private sector spends, and universities and NGOs spend. India, the private sector spends the least. Look at the patents that the Ambanis, the Reliance Group, and the Adani Group have. Compare it with Huawei or Samsung. It's orders of magnitude. So it's a broader thing. We shouldn't see this only as the central government doing mistakes. The mistakes are much wider, and therefore the challenge is greater.
I think on China, I think the more, I would say even more obvious lesson that we should have drawn is, Devesh spoke about higher education, but the complete failure of our primary and basic education, which, between 1950 and 1980, China was in utter chaos, political chaos, economic chaos. But even over that period, how much they increased enrollment, learning, public health was staggering. Today, I don't mean to be disrespectful to your host. KTR said that, we've done great things in primary education. But Devesh, while he was talking, looked at that thing. There are 25% of students in Telangana today who are out of school. So and Pratham has documented how, and this too, remember, higher education at least is a prerogative of the center. Basic and primary education are all within the mandate of the state governments. So that's why we have a line in the book which says, whatever the center does badly in India, the states do much worse.
Wow. Well, that's a pretty depressing scenario. And I want to ask you one other question, which actually comes back to planning and pre-thinking things. I would say that China, and they're doing it even now, they may have over-invested, they may be overproducing, they have their own problems, of excess. But I think what KTR said was that if he got a chance to be the chief of the opposition, not even in government, is that he would have a map of the entire country, all the water resources, and he would deploy different approaches to different parts of the country. Landlocked Telangana will have one approach, coastal region will have another approach. One never seems to have a feeling that there is that kind of planning for the nation or pre-thinking that, okay, if AI is going to come, what are we going to do? What is the new economic levers we're going to need? There's none of that discussion. And you've been an economic advisor, Arvind. Does that kind of thinking at all exist in India? Is that something that China has which we don't have?
I mean, without wanting to get into, whether everything, see, I think when KTR spelled that out, certainly, it's a visionary, lots of visionary things that he says. But if you look at the last 10 years of elections in India, right? Every political party is promising freebies, do caste census, do reservations. These are all, the policy instrument of choice. What Devesh and I strongly think is that the political imagination of most of the leaders in India is stunted. Why is it that Uttar Pradesh and Bihar cannot say, we have the cheapest labor in the world. All the factories of labor-intensive goods that are leaving China, we will get those factories to come to our state, increase our private investment, increase employment, increase, inclusive growth and so on. Why is it that we don't see that political imagination in India? So a lot of what we blame democracy or the state is finally maybe just stunted political imagination because a history of doing the same things over and over again. But that's why I think India being so large, this competitive federalism dynamic should jerk and shake people out of their complacency. Tamil Nadu is attracting Foxconn. UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan should say, we will attract that Foxconn as well. So I think there's both a sad, tragic part of the stunted political imagination, but the hopeful part is, competitive federalism and examples can spread in India as well.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying that, when we have a chapter looking at different states, and one state we look at is sort of West Bengal, which was, in the early 50s, India's leading state, right? And it's a state that has absolutely the most steady decline relative to other states. We talk of the lack of imagination in the heartland. West Bengal was where the sort of Indian Renaissance, in a sense, began in the late 19th century. It was the center of industrialization, the center of higher education, of learning, of research, right? How do you explain its decline? And that clearly is, if you say, well, it's the opposition states, well, Tamil Nadu has an opposition party, so has West Bengal. Why has Tamil Nadu managed to do much better than West Bengal? So we have to ask harder questions of our states and not just focus on the central government.
So on West Bengal, I think it's something I find fascinating about democracy. It's true that a lot of accountability should happen between elections, but some amount of accountability should also happen at elections, right? So West Bengal has seen the steadiest long-run decline of its fortunes, from the richest now to very below median. But for 35 years, it had a party that presided over this decline, and yet it kept getting elected, re-elected, re-elected 7 times. So what does it say about democracy as an accountability mechanism that such things can happen?
No, in fact, Shoma, West Bengal is the only state over last 50 years, it has had only 3 chief ministers. 50 years, only 3 chief ministers. We normally think political stability should give you all these pluses. But actually, it's just constricted the imagination of what that state. The fact is, Bangladesh, which was partitioned from, as you know, and as we know around independence, East Pakistan was much poorer than West Bengal. On so many indicators, it's now doing better than West Bengal.
So I don't want to flog West Bengal. So if you look at West Bengal, right?
As you can see, I have no identity
Yeah,
politics.
exactly.
I'm not standing up for Bengal at all.
So in the book, what we do is we make two comparisons for Bengal. We say, you can say West Bengal and Bangladesh, one comparison, because there broadly you're holding culture constant and saying, what about the other factors? But then we also compare West Bengal and Kerala, where the ideology of communism, the left is common, and West Bengal does worse than Bangladesh and worse than Kerala. So both on culture and on ideology and politics, it does very bad. And the question is why? And that's the question.
And what if both of you are economists, political scientists, and sociologists? What's the answer? Why?
You want me to give a mischievous answer?
Yeah.
The mischievous answer is India's greatest economists are mostly Bengalis.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you on that, but Amartya Sen can't even speak up for himself now. So
The only two economics Indian Nobel Prize winners are Bengali, Amartya Sen and Abhijit Banerjee.
I want Abhijit to airdrop here right now, but Devesh, really, a more serious answer, why?
I genuinely believe that if there's one state that was let down by its intellectuals, it was West Bengal.
It's just a politer way of saying what I just said.
No, but I'm saying more broadly, I sort of grew up in that state. I was part all the rallies. They were far more concerned about Cuba, about Vietnam, about imperialism.
China, don't it?
But the fact that the garbage was not collected, the fact that industries were dying, the fact that that for 100 years Indians came to Calcutta to look for livelihoods. And there's now, past quarter century, young Bengalis seek to leave Calcutta to seek their livelihoods. There is no better indicator of the confidence a people have in their future when the young vote with their feet.
By the way, that's also true of Punjab in spades. Huh?
Yeah, actually it's Punjab, and I was going to ask you both by the same yardstick, both UP and Bihar have been the crucible of both political momentum as well as intellect. I mean, some of the greatest intellectual history also was in Bihar and UP, not just politics, but even the bureaucracy, So what is about this entire Gangetic belt? What is going on over there?
No, look, this is something we don't really look into depth, so just a very, I think the South gained because it had strong social movements prior to competitive electoral politics, which happened with the Justice Party here, the movements in Kerala against the caste system, which is so that we must remember, prior to the left front coming to power in 1950, Kerala was already a complete outlier in literacy. It had occurred prior to independence. So that what we say is many of core public goods are co-produced with society. The hierarchies of social hierarchies, which we know in India have been so acute and have been a big part of our political cleavages, those were not eradicated, but had been attenuated by social movements in the South prior to electoral politics. Whereas in the North, that social movements did not occur. So then the burden on social change fell entirely on politics.
So I would add, so Devesh's explanation is, holds true and is very valid and can explain things up to a certain point, right? But, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, why did this continue? So that begs the question of why this continued, right? And so I would argue that, many, identity politics in a way encrusted, has much worse. The hold of the previously landholding caste, and this is actually to give credit to Abhijit Banerjee, he has a paper which shows that those things still persist. But I do think that the post-independence arrangements, I'll highlight two, have contributed to this as well. One is the whole system of fiscal transfers in India. Raghuram Rajan and I wrote a series of papers on how aid can be detrimental. I.e., essentially that you get money which you don't earn yourself or tax yourself. The Indian fiscal arrangements, federal arrangements, while they were useful in bringing about some redistribution between poorer and richer states, they have gotten to a point where aid has become like a drug or a dependency, which means that these governments, and this is kind of coming to the criticism of some of the South, which has partial merit. Our federal arrangements have reinforced that. And in the case of Punjab, for example, all the subsidies that are going into this, which is provided by the central government, perpetuate this thing about, the whole agriculture, being stuck in agriculture. So the impetus for change and taking action on your own is impeded by some of these arrangements that we've put in place over the last 30, 40 years.
But just to also clarify, what we show empirically in the book, there's this whole debate, especially prominent here, about these are South-North.
Transfer of resources is happening from the West, Haryana, and the South. So these are the countries that are, states that are transferring resources. But the point Devesh, I think, wanted to make was that the biggest provider of those resources is not the South, but the West. So
but by the West, you mean Haryana?
No, Gujarat and Maharashtra. Gujarat and Maharashtra and Haryana. So relative to how much they contribute to economic activity and how much resources that are, tax resources that are given, they are the contributors. But the beneficiaries are the Hindi heartland and the eastern states. But I think, without getting into the identity question, the point is the beneficiary states, there's like an aid curse that happens which prevents them from taking action.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, though this is fascinating and there's just endless amounts more that I want to ask you. But I had threatened that I was going to ask you for some prescriptions, And before that, when you were saying about this direct fiscal transfer, that we are hurtling towards a world where the absolute uber capitalists are beginning to talk about a universal basic income, because you're literally and systematically and structurally preparing for a society where the work itself will not be an instrument of redistribution. You will not be able to earn, and there's this discussion happening. So one is the long view, that do you see that coming era is something that India should engage with, given that we have 1/6 of humanity? And in the shorter term, what are some prescriptions that both of you would give?
So shall I just take the universal basic income? So in fact, it was Devesh, Kapoor, Partha, and I who wrote about 15 years ago about these, cash transfers and basic income. And as you know, the economic survey also with that. But I have come a little bit to regret this whole push towards universal basic income, partly because it's not something out, it's already happened in India. The amount of cash transfers that are happening in India is enormous. I mean, if you look at the ILO statistics, it's almost 2/3 of India is getting some kind of social transfer or the other. So in India, we're almost de facto in a world of, because with Beti, all this, what's a Mahila scheme and, all these things. So we're almost there. The problem, what's going in favor of universal basic income is that it provides this minimum protection. But what we've seen in India is, one, it's led to competitive populism because of one feature of universal basic income. It is very appealing to use, but it's very appealing to abuse as well. Because if one state says, I'll give you 1,000, everyone's very happy, but the next state comes and says, we'll give you 2,000, which is even more appealing. So in some senses, universal basic income has been boomeranged a little bit, apart from the fiscal strain that it's putting on states. So UBI is something that we're almost, it's not in the future, in India we're already almost there in a different form on universal basic income.
Yeah, but again, because there's been so much disparity in India, there can't be an argument about redistribution, because also in the extreme growth years, like you said, a lot of people were pulled out of poverty. But at the same time, there's also been an escalating difference between the super wealthy and those who don't have. So I don't know what the mechanism is. But my resistance to universal basic income is not the redistribution of wealth, good, bad, ugly, but that you are preparing for a structural situation in society where by and large there's going to be such asymmetrical concentration of wealth and people will not be able to even work to be able to earn, you know. So that is what's really driving it in the West. I'm not saying in India, but that's where the root of the idea is in the West. And that is a frightening structure of a society.
Yeah, but I think, before we come to your last one, but I think we should not succumb to this, oh, we can't provide jobs in India. I think our challenge ahead has to be that we will try and provide jobs to as many people as possible. So we can't throw up our hands and say, oh, UBI, because we can't provide jobs. The AI problem, etc., is happening, but, you know, still a lot of job opportunities in India that need to be created. So we shouldn't give up on that.
So that brings me to the prescriptions. We'll end on that. What are one or two very urgent things you need doing?
So just one thing on AI. I think we are really too focused on AI. What's really happening is a much deeper and larger change, what we call the fourth industrial revolution, which is linked with the Internet of Things, IoT, and robots. And it is the combination of all this that will have far-reaching effects. AI will just be one part of this. I mean, we sort of imply but not state because we stayed off the prescriptions. I mean, there are two. Just if you ask the question, as a country, what is it we have an excess of? We don't have an excess of oil or gas or rare earths. The only thing that we truly have an excess of is people. We are 1/6 of the humanity. It's the one thing that we have so badly invested in, whether it's health, whether it's primary school, whether it's higher education. The fact that 1.5 million students, Indian students, have to go, and each time there's a conflict in Ukraine or, you know, you find, my God, there are 20,000 Indian students studying in Ukraine. We got to pull them out. They are in Georgia, in Kyrgyzstan. We say we are good in services, but we can't provide higher education. I mean, if you look at every ASAR report on the quality of education and schooling. So if we empower our young people with the human capital and trust them to build their own future, I think that is the most powerful thing that we can do.
So I would slightly disagree with that in the following sense. You know, that we know this is true, it's always been true, but we've been able to do very little about that. So as an exhortation, it's great, but as execution, you know, we failed. So that's why I think we end the book by saying we will not. So we end the book by saying, look, do no harm. Remember, we end the book with the air pollution problem in Delhi. If you look at the air pollution problem, it's really a miniature for what needs to be done in India as a whole to get India on the track. Because if you look at air pollution, it involves cooperation between the center and the regions. It involves a cooperation. It requires maybe, you know, something needs to be done to the subsidies for Punjab that create part of the burning problem. It requires action to improve regulation for all the particles and stuff that happens.
Construction, dust.
Construction, all of those things. So, you know, if India could solve the air pollution problem, I think even Devesh's exhortation of solving the human capital problem will be achieved. Now, the thing is that when we say do no harm, we say it in this specific sense. India has had a number of major achievements: nation building, good institutions, free press, pluralism, and a reasonably good cooperation between the center and the states. These are all the pillars and the foundations for everything that's happened and everything that will happen in the future. So for God's sake, at least that which you build, don't unbuild. And that's the sense of in which you say, do no harm.
So if I could add just one last thing. I think, look, one of the things we never built, because we did not really think about that, which is sort of urbanization.
Sorry, will you speak?
Sort of our sort of urban, future.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Sort of urban cities.
Right, urban cities, yeah.
Fact is, growth will come from dynamic cities. It is absolutely clear, the 74th Amendment, the states have completely sabotaged it. There is simply no doubt about it. We show, when we compare India with the other giants, US and China, if you look at where government employees are, in the US and China, the maximum are at the federal and at the local level. The minimum are at the state level. India is exactly the opposite. By far the maximum are at the state level, very few at the center and local. If we do not create a system, we talk about, the center is over-centralized, all of that. Some of it is true. The real centralization problem we are saying is between tier 2 and tier 3, namely our urban local bodies. If we do not get our cities are the future. If we do not get them and empower them, essentially instead of 28 states competing, you have essentially hundreds of cities competing with each other. That creates a completely different dynamic. And if we don't do that, it's going to be much harder.
So the reason we, I'm going to take a dig at Devesh. The reason we ended the book is because, Devesh has his pet peeves, human capital, urbanization. I have my pet peeves, and we couldn't resolve which were the more important pet peeves. So we compromised and said, do no harm.
That makes me feel very bad for being relentless with KTR earlier, because they are managing many more complex things than the two brilliant minds of two great friends who can't agree on something, So, but maybe we do need Chinese authoritarianism then. But jokes aside, that was fantastic. Thank you very much. I would love to have a series of conversations with you, because there's just so much to unpeel and to understand. But thank you, and like you said, from the lessons of the past, someone had a wonderful phrase for India that, why is there a kind of schizophrenic brilliance in the country, that you're brilliant when you go out and mediocre when you stay, That's a very depressing situation for how we are. So I have many questions to ask, whether there should be lateral entry into government. Do we need professionals? Do we need a new structure for government where I've always been opposed to some amount of privatization, but maybe definitely in Delhi, garbage, air pollution, drains, roads should be given to corporations, and government should just ensure it's well done. So maybe just all new structures, but I think people are hungry, and these are conversations we can have outside. Thank you for your analysis, your diagnosis, and we're going to hold you to new prognosis very soon. Okay. Thank you very much, both of you. Thank you.
I think...
Sorry. Yes. If any of you want to sign the books, they are going to be outside at the table. The bar is open. The snacks will flow. And thank you, as always, for being such a wonderful audience.